Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 71 and it's the first podcast I'm recording in 2024. So shall I say Happy New Year? I guess I will. It's January in the UK, which means the weather is cold and it means that there are lots of pesky cold and flu germs going around. So you can hear in my voice that I have been a victim of those germs. I have a 2.5-year-old son as well. So having a toddler in the house does mean a slightly elevated chance of germs. And so hopefully my voice does hold out for this podcast episode and hopefully you'll stick with me. It's podcast recording day. It's in my calendar and it's a non-negotiable. So it's happening. Let's talk about what an ideal client actually looks like for a wellness expert or a health practitioner. And I want to use this episode to expand your thinking around that definition of what an ideal client actually is, because as I teach in my business short courses, in my community, consistent clients, when you're thinking about your niche, I particularly reference a specific framework in which I ask you to think about 4 specific areas of your niche in order to compound those elements together to create what I would consider to be a profitable niche. Now, the first is your person. So those characteristics of who and the identity of that individual that clearly articulate in your mind who that person is that you want to work with. But there are 3 other elements, and those other 3 elements are the problem that that person is experiencing. So typically that will be a set of symptoms, pain points, things that are frustrating or overwhelming to your ideal client that you have the tools to help resolve. The third component is the outcome that that person desires. So what are they working towards? What is that transformation that they desire in their life? What's the opposite really of the flip side of those symptoms that they may have been suffering from? And then finally, that 4th component is your process, the way in which you combine the modalities that you have studied or the qualifications that you have gained as a practitioner to create a unique toolkit or process by which you get the result. Now, let's come back to the first element, that person element. Who is your ideal client? And the way that I want to expand your thinking today is to start thinking about the characteristics of somebody that you will enjoy working with, because so often we limit ourselves to those standardized or textbook demographic aspects of a person, like age or gender or income, or they are a woman over 40 who wants to get fit or who is experiencing symptoms of menopause or perimenopause. And that thinking is all very helpful. However, there are some elements or characteristics of an ideal client for a wellness expert that I want you to start thinking about adding to your list, that I want you to start having in the back of your mind when you communicate with your audience, when you're creating content for your audience. And hopefully these are all desirable qualities for you, but it will start you thinking about the types of qualities that make a good client outside of those demographics that I mentioned. So things like an individual client that you're working with being somebody who is reliable, a client being somebody who is committed to a transformation. Your ideal client should be somebody who shows up when they say they're going to show up. So they come to sessions on time. They are honest about where they're at in their journey and are unafraid to or comfortable to share with you where they might be struggling, or to be honest about the fact that, since the last session that you had with them or the last time you spoke, they may have fallen off the horse or, maybe not as progressed as much as they would have liked to, or, whatever else it might be that they're experiencing that is getting in the way of that transformation, that they're honest enough to communicate that with you. So all of these more identity-based or personal characteristics, character-based identity markers are going to be just as important as that person fitting into the category of somebody with the symptoms that you have. Now, I'll give you just an example to bring this to life a little bit. Let's say somebody comes to you who, and you're someone who works with women over 40 on diet and weight loss. And a woman over 40 comes to you and she wants to lose weight, but she is flaky on email, committing to a discovery session with you. She is abrupt in her email and frankly, comes across as rude or, not thoughtful to your boundaries, reschedules 5 times. You can start to see where just because an individual fits a certain set of demographical or symptomatic characteristics of an ideal client, it doesn't mean they are going to be a great client for you to work with in the long term. And one of the privileges that you have as an expert running your own business, in control of your own future, making decisions about the type of client that you want to work with, is that you also get to choose to work with people who are great people, who have great energy, who, whilst may not be perfect and we're not looking for perfection, are committed to the journey, are committed to the transformation, and want to be honest about where they're at in their journey. And you will get better and better over the course of building your business at identifying some of those red flags, those personality traits that come through on email that in your gut or instinctively, a warning sign that perhaps this is not going to be a client that you will enjoy working with over the long term. And the interesting element to this conversation is where you get to be in control about attracting these types of individuals. Because you might be thinking in your mind, well, that's all well and good, Lauren, but how do I make sure I attract great people who are reliable and committed and thoughtful and considerate and honest in their progress? And there's a little bit of a mirror exercise that happens where you get to ask yourself, how am I showing up with those characteristics in my business right now? So most of you will be in some way investing in your own coaching or investing in your own personal development or investing in your own learning. So in some instance in your life right now, whether in your business directly or otherwise, you are a client to somebody. You are a member of a gym. You are a member of a lifestyle center, or maybe you're a consumer of yoga classes at a private studio. You may use an online service. Frankly, you might have an accountant or a dentist or something else. And in the way in which you consume a service, you have the opportunity to display all of those same characteristics in your life, in your business. So this is really about, in every aspect of your business, setting a standard for yourself that you expect from your clients, and as best you can, living those expectations or standards for yourself in order to attract that same level of commitment and those same characteristics from the clients in which you work with. So this is where there's an opportunity for you to notice whether, if you are currently or historically have been attracting clients who are maybe flaky or don't want to pay on time or are challenging to work with, where you get to have an honest examination of yourself to see where those qualities need to be, maybe improved or maybe elevated, or where you need to challenge yourself to be upholding those high standards for yourself. I'll give you an example. When it comes to paying your taxes, do you pay early? Do you pay on time? Do you pay late? When it comes to, paying for other services, are you someone who pays early, on time, or late? And if you're somebody who maybe has a pattern in your life of, waiting right to the last minute or paying late or forgetting about things or not being on top of your admin, there's an energy there in your business and life that will become a mirror for your ideal client, where there's a tendency or a risk that you start to attract that same maybe chaos or disorganization from the clients that come to you. Now, this is not always the case, of course, and you might be thinking, that's just not true for me. I'm actually an extremely reliable and diligent person, and I'm still attracting flaky individuals. There's an opportunity for an honest conversation with yourself. But the other part of this is in the way that you communicate those qualities that you uphold through your messaging, through your content. So when you're talking to your audience through social media content, through Instagram stories, through LinkedIn posts, are you talking about how important those qualities are for your ideal client to achieve transformation? Because as you emphasize those in the language of your communication, in your marketing, as you list out the qualities of somebody who gets results, your ideal client, when they're waiting in the wings, that prospect who's watching you and learning from you and understanding how you work, sees the importance of those qualities, recognizes the importance of those aspects of somebody who is successful, and in themselves will challenge themselves to be that person for you. Again, let's bring this to life. So let's say in your marketing, you're talking about your online program and how you work with clients and how, your most successful clients are the ones who really stay committed to the outcome, even when it's challenging, even when it feels difficult, even on those days where, it's cold and rainy or it's inconvenient. Those clients who are successful for you really stay committed, and you emphasize that quality when you're talking about your success stories, when you're referencing your case studies, when you're talking about your most successful clients, you emphasize, that quality of commitment. For somebody watching that content or consuming that content who perhaps has the symptoms that you could help them to solve, recognizes that, it's not just about the symptoms. I also need to be someone who's committed. And if they aren't somebody who is currently committed, then perhaps they recognize in themselves that they're not the right person to reach out to you. And so we can see how embedding the conversation about these qualities in your marketing almost becomes a qualifying mechanism. And the reason it becomes a qualifying mechanism is because you are an expert in your field. You are the authority on this subject. And so the more that you can create in your mind and then bring language and articulation to an identity of somebody who is successful in overcoming those symptoms, who is successful in resolving the problem that you help your clients to resolve, the more that you can speak to the identity of that type of person, the more your prospects and your leads and your audience understand who they need to be in order to be successful working with you, but also just successfully overcome the symptoms that they personally are experiencing too. And your audience will rise to the level of that identity. So in my language of communication, in my marketing message, I talk a lot about the profitable wellness expert and the identity of that profitable wellness expert, and the fact that a profitable wellness expert commits to showing up and being visible even when the results aren't flowing. They are honest in what they currently understand about the business side of things and what they don't. They are willing to learn and take action. They are getting more and more comfortable every day about making money doing this important work in the world. They are committed to taking small daily actions that compound over time to get results. They are clear on what they desire for their life and their business, as well as the impact that they want to have on the world. Now, none of these qualities have anything to do with where somebody lives or the gender that they are or their age. These are all qualities that comprise an identity of somebody who is successful when they work with me. And I paint that picture day after day through my content, through this podcast, through my Instagram content and my stories, through the sales pages that we have for our short courses and our online communities, because more and more my focus is on attracting the type of person that I know that I will love working with. And it's not just about the fact that somebody's struggling to make money as a wellness expert. My ideal client is somebody who is all of those things, but also who I'm going to love working with because they're committed, they desire to take action, they're honest, they want to have fun, they want to enjoy the journey, they're not afraid of a bit of hard work, and so on. So be honest in your communication, not only about who and what you can help with, but also that identity piece. And a good exercise to frame this for yourself is to really sit down and ask yourself, who is my dream client? Outside of the symptoms that I can solve, outside of the outcome and transformation that I can provide, who is my ideal client? Who do I love working with when I think about the qualities of that person? When I think about my favorite client, how would I describe them? Are they high energy? Are they fun? Are they, reliable, committed? All of those things that I've mentioned as examples in this episode. This is a really good place to start. Write that list, and then 2 things. First, start activating in your own life those qualities and demonstrating through the actions that you take. So if commitment is one of your characteristics of an ideal client, start showing up on your social media channels, in your email marketing as someone who's committed. Show examples of how you're being more committed in your life, whether it's, prepping your meals for the week on a Sunday or showing up on time to an appointment. Demonstrate through storytelling how those qualities are being embedded in your own life, and you will become an example and you will set the standard of the type of a client that you want to attract yourself. The second thing is simply communicating that as a necessary aspect or characteristic of the identity of somebody who is successful doing the work that you do. And in that way, you create an identity that your ideal client can't help but live up to, and will actively repel, the more you talk about that identity, somebody who doesn't fit that criteria. And that's okay. It's okay to repel the person who's not committed. It's okay to repel the person who doesn't have discipline if that is a characteristic you desire. It's okay to repel someone who doesn't feel ready. So do that exercise. I'd love for you to reach out to me, connect with me on Instagram, share your list with me, share what you learned about your ideal client through this exercise. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this was useful for you. A short, sharp episode, practical, write the list, and then see if you can start to embed some of this into the way that you speak to your audience. And I promise you, if you do that, your caliber of ideal client will dramatically increase, and you will start to attract more of that client that you love working with for the long term. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode.